Hey guys, I'm Tim with BleepinJeep. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to rehang an old hammer. Now, if you're wrenching on Jeeps or working around the garage, you're definitely familiar with the ball peen hammer. This is just a common tool. I use tools a lot, and oftentimes I'm looking for tools at yard sales and thrift stores, things like that, and I'm sure you are as well, or sometimes you'll just find them. And one of the things I come across a lot are old hammer heads, ball peen heads, just like this one, with rotten handles or no handles at all. Or like this one, this is what we'll be replacing the handle on today. Someone will have shoved something in there in an attempt to secure the head to the handle. I came across a hatchet handle at a thrift store a few days ago. I should have taken a picture of it. I don't know why I didn't, but the handle had been cut off and just the hatchet head had a stub of the handle left. There was probably 30 different nails bent in U shapes and just everything you can imagine hammered into it, trying to keep the head tight on the handle. And this is not the way, and that was not the way. So today I'm going to show you a proper way to rehang an old hammer. I'm using a technique that's been used for eons, and if you do it right, you'll never have to put a new handle on a tool like this again. If any of you guys are familiar with this brand new Britain, I'd be really interested to read your comments. I did Google search it when I first got this hammer a while back. I don't remember exactly, but I believe they were based out of Connecticut, and they were a manufacturer of tools in the about 1920s, 1940. Then their name changed several times, and ultimately they became manufacturer for the Craftsman brand at Sears, of course. But maybe your grandfather or great-grandfather used these tools, and if any of you guys are familiar or have seen this before, I'd be really curious to read your comments. And this particular hammer model looks like a H-24-1, whatever that is, maybe 24 ounce, could be. The handle looks like, oh gosh, who knows, looks like maybe it was dipped in used motor oil or something, but anyway, it's not in good shape. It's real chipped up on the end and splintered, and somebody has, looks like a self-tapper or something driven in there, and you can see the head isn't seated all the way. So that needs to go. I wouldn't normally pinch a wooden handle like that in a vise, but this thing's getting tossed. What do you bet? Somebody thought they were real clever putting this little thing in there. I always like undoing somebody else's handiwork. It's always kind of fun. See what the heck they had going on here. Yeah. Alright, now that we have most of the fasteners out of this, you should be able to just take this punch, tap right here, and just blast that handle right on out. Try to hang on to the head. Now that we have this old handle out of the way, the obvious thing to do is to select the appropriate handle for this head, and basically whatever size you like is kind of appropriate. This handle length that it came with looks pretty nice to me, so I'll try to find one like this. And this is one of the most important parts actually about rehanging a hammer, is selecting the right handle. And when I say the right handle, not so much the shape, the contours, or anything like that at all, but the grain of the wood. And I don't have a handle here, which means we are going to go on a trip to the hardware store, and I'm going to show you how to select the best handle possible and what to look for when you're choosing one. Alright, I just pulled up at the hardware store. These guys run a pretty tight operation here, and they generally have everything I need. So let's go take a look. Hopefully we can find a nice handle today. Ended up finding a pretty decent handle to replace the old one with, and the reason it's pretty decent and not perfect is exactly what I'm going to show you right now. And it has to do with the orientation of the grain. So ideally what you want let's pretend that we are drawing this shape here if you're looking straight down on the head of the hammer. It's going to look something like this, and you have the wooden wedge that the handle comes with, like I have here, that runs front to back in the direction of the hammer, is going to be like this. And then let's duplicate this drawing over here, and again we have that wooden wedge that pushes everything tight, running front to back in line with the hammer. You want the grain of the wood, if you're looking down on it, to be in line with the wedge, always. So when you're looking down on your handle, the grain should be in the same direction as the wedge. For any strike tool this is true, whether it's an axe, a pick, or a hammer. When you're hitting with it, you want the force to be going in the direction of the grain. What you absolutely don't want is the opposite, where the grain goes perpendicular to the wedge. Like that. And a lot of times you'll find kind of a mix where the grain is going kind of 45 degrees, or sometimes it'll curve right in the shape of the handle. Now the handle, I found this one, it's kind of this situation here. It's about 45 degrees. Actually, maybe not even that bad. Has more of the curve in it, and it's just not ideal. It's the best one that they had though, and for $5 it's going to be just fine. The wooden wedge it came with is split, but I don't think that's going to be a problem, and now it's just a matter of fitting this to that head. Let's get to it. Now oftentimes you have to sand this quite a bit to get it to fit. I'm pushing down kind of hard on purpose, not expecting it to go in necessarily, but by doing that and then pulling it back out, we can see where we're rubbing, where we're contacting real hard. We want this to be snug, but it doesn't need to be insanely tight. We don't need to beat the head on or anything, because we're going to pound this wedge into there to open it up after the fact. Everything should just fit real nice. And where they split this, we want that to go, we certainly don't want it like that. We want the head to be down, at least covering that completely. A lot of people think you got to hit the head onto the handle, but it's actually that's not how it works. The best way to do it is to take another mallet of some kind and just smack the back of the handle here, and it really just drives that head onto there from the shock, and that's super tight when you do it by those means. This fitting part can be a little bit of a process, but basically you just want to come back and start seating this thing on there slowly, and then pulling it off again, which can be kind of hard to do. Just doing that over and over again, and you can see that when we do that, it's giving us real clear impressions in the wood of where it's too tight on the head. So when I'm sanding this, I'm just trying to hit these areas only where the marks are, and then extend them further down the shaft here just a little bit. We don't want to take too much because we do want a nice full fit. I'm getting really close to having this where I want it, but like I said earlier, I don't like to see the spread line from the handle, and so I might be able to drive the handle all the way up and out so that this is secluded under the head. but there's a chance I might crack the whole handle by doing that if I don't file a little bit more. This might take, I don't know, 10, 20 times, but this is definitely the best way to get a really secure fit. Alright, that did it. I was able to seat this thing down where I want it. And this excess little bit of handle, we're just going to cut that off. The next thing to do is to get this wedge in there. Like I said, that wedge came broken with this handle. It's probably fine actually, but now the trick is going to be to fit this wedge into that split and hammer this thing in. This is already a really tight fit. It is this. You could probably use it like this, but we're going to do this correct and finish the job here. I use just a touch of wood glue, just tight bond. Any kind of commercial grade wood glue is going to be just fine. It's a real tight fit where this wedge is going, so we don't need much glue. So it's basically just going to force out whatever we put on here, but it's going to give us a little bit better retention on this wedge for sure, just to have some glue. So we'll get that there in the split. Just try to hammer that in. Really not concerned with it going anywhere. And I prefer, I've actually changed a little bit since I did this one. I like to have the handle coming up above the head just a little bit, so that when you hammer that wedge in, it'll flare that wood out just a touch, and it helps retain everything just that much more. And the very last thing we're going to do is drive this metal wedge in. The workbench in the garage here is just a little too high for me, so I'm down on the ground. And now I like to put this metal wedge in about 45 degrees. That's kind of what I prefer. Sometimes you'll see two of them. This is a real small piece of wood, so one is fine. And just very slowly start driving this in. I guarantee that the hickory is going to split when I start putting this in. This one has, a lot of my axes, they will. The thing is, it doesn't matter, it's just part of the process. It doesn't split below the head in the hammer. It's just gonna, you might see some hairline cracks up here, but that is just fine. Alright guys, well, after I got the steel wedge pounded into the hammer, I sanded it just a little bit to bring this down because it was pretty proud. Now it's above about maybe a 1/4 inch above the head, and I might just shape it a little bit more. And that is it. This is a beautiful tool, a high quality American made tool, and there's something very fulfilling to me about taking one of these old heads that are 100 years old or more in some cases, that have basically been abandoned, and then putting them back into service. Now there's one last thing that I haven't addressed yet, and that is, a lot of the time when you buy a handle, it has a varnish on it. It's kind of like a clear coat, and they just do that these days for shipping purposes and to keep things fresher. But that is not really a good working surface to hang on to, and oftentimes it can actually cause blisters if you're really hanging on to something a lot, like a shovel. So what I do is I sand that off, and that's the very last thing, is to sand off any trace of that varnish that they ship these with. And then I treat everything with boiled linseed oil, and it might take several coats for the wood to soak it in, but once it does, you're going to be left with a very beautifully finished wood tool that is meant for work. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope I have given you the courage to try this yourself, if nothing else, and we'll see you in the next video.